Hey everyone, it's Melanie of Art Studio 320, and this week I am refinishing a toy chest for my neighbors across the street. It's a Harry Potter theme and they are letting me do what I want, and that's always fun. If you haven't subscribed yet, please take a moment and press that red button. You can follow me on Instagram and find me on Etsy, where I am selling some of my past projects that I've done right here on my channel. Stick around. I'm starting off with vinegar and water, and I use a 1-to-1 ratio, 1 part water, 1 part vinegar, and that's not exact science there, so don't worry if you get it exact. It really didn't need too much cleaning. It was just kind of dusty, and I thought it would be best to remove the lid. It just would make it much easier to work with. I'm using my Bosch random orbital sander to get off all of that old stain, and some of the wood was kind of rough. There were some areas that could have caused splinters, so I wanted to smooth those out. And then there were some repairs, so I had my plastic WORX to the rescue, just to fill in some gaps, some spots where the wood didn't quite come together. I used my plastic WORX to fill in all of the rough spots on the top by watering down the wood filler and then spraying it with my spray bottle. And when you do that, you want to go against the grain. You don't want to go with the grain, or you'll just pull it right back off again, and then you just sand it down. Of course, after the wood filler dries is when you sand it down, and then you want to use a tack cloth or a microfiber cloth to wipe it all down before you paint. Now I'm using a Midnight Blue by Fusion, and I'm also using a metallic by Fusion, which is actually kind of translucent. So you want to paint underneath it with something that is very similar, like maybe a cream color, or they recommend buttermilk. Of course, I read that after I already painted, and I can see why. Do that first. Okay, I wanted to paint the majority of the piece, but I also wanted to show some wood. So I taped off the bottom, and then I used a roller for everything, really. It just looks nicer. It gives a nice smooth finish, and I like the results. And after I was finished painting, I used my finishing pads to smooth it all down. And of course, you're always going to get a little bit of paint here and there, so you just want to go back and sand it down with a 120 or 220 grit. So I'm using General Finishes Antique Walnut, which I really like. It's a nice rich color, and it's just enough wood showing that it just kind of makes it a little bit more sophisticated looking, even though it's a toy chest. So I even did the inside. I wanted to make sure that I finished the whole thing so it just really looked nice inside and out. I literally just read about this paint, and I was wondering while I was painting with it why it wasn't covering well. Well, it's because it's a translucent. If I'd read the directions, I would have known that. So, note to me and note to you, read the label. This is an amazing casting resin, which I use when I want to use a mold and create little shapes, and this seemed like a perfect project for using these molds. Want more information about making molds, you can check out my video, Design Your Own Vase with Molds. And also, I actually use molds on one of my pieces of furniture, so you can check both of those videos out. The links will be in the description box below. Now, I thought I was going to use these stars on the top, but I soon discovered that I didn't like the look, even when I painted them a pearl color. So I put those off to the side in case I wanted to use them somewhere else. I am using a universal metallic in the color Satin Nickel. It's by Rust-Oleum. And I'm just spraying very lightly, as you can see, to get a little bit of background of stars. I'm working on a night sky, and this is tricky. So now I'm using my spray bottle and spraying some water on, because now I'm going to use a little bit of the pearl, water that down, and I've got a chip brush here, and this is why. I'm going to use two different techniques to create more stars, but I don't want them all the same. So I practice there. I'm starting with some bigger stars, and I'm again putting some water on first. And the reason I'm doing that is so that I can create little halos around these stars so they look like they're glowing. And the first technique I use is I'm tapping it on my hand to create bigger spots, and then I go back and I use my fingers and go through the bristles like you would on a toothbrush to create smaller stars. So I hope that makes sense. Then I went back, and there were a few that were kind of big and blobby, so I decided to make those into bigger stars, and I used the back side of the paintbrush, and I just pulled away some of the pigment away from the center and made it shine bright so it looked like it was twinkling. So I did a few of those, and I am pretty happy with the results. I think it looks like a night sky. It's supposed to be you laying on the ground looking up at the sky. Because I'm limited to what kind of sanders I can use, I had a little trouble getting these 4 squares to be smooth enough for me. So I had to go back over with the roller, and that worked. This is when I appreciate the internet so much, because it was so easy for me to look up a Harry Potter font. And I chose this one, copied it, practiced it, then I shrunk it down with my ruler. I just made a nice line so that I could use that to transfer onto the lid. And what I'm going to do next, after I finish writing it out, is I'm going to turn it over and I put it on my light table. Now, if you don't have a light table, you can use a window, just tape it to a window. You turn it over on the back side, and in my case, I needed a light color to go on the blue. So I traced it with a white charcoal pencil, and then I turned it back over, and I was able to transfer by going over the front side and transferring the white charcoal onto the surface I was going to paint. That, my friends, is a really useful trick in art. It is all my work. I am not tracing. I wrote those all myself, but it saves a lot of heartache if you make a mistake. It just makes it a lot easier. So take that one and use it, I hope. I thought chocolate frogs would be perfect because I think those are so fun. So I found a mold that was for chocolate frogs, and I created 4 different frogs and 2 owls. I painted them with a Maduro brown by Melange, and then I sprayed them with a polyurethane. And with the owl, I wanted to use a couple different colors, grays. I used the white of the mold and the brown, and then I added some tobacco brown by Melange for the feet and just around the eyes. Those 3 squares on the front really gave me a lot of trouble. They weren't even. They were a little rough around the edges, so I wanted to smooth them out, make it a little nicer. So I used some dowels I had, measured them, cut them with my oscillating tool, and then I painted them blue. Now I put some painter's tape underneath. I made a loop so it'd stick to the table and to the dowel rods. Made it much easier to paint all of these dowel rods at once. Then I used my True Bond it's a wood glue, to glue them. I decided to paint a little bit of the midnight blue underneath so that the gold wouldn't show through. And I think they turned out really nice. I thought they framed it really well, made the squares look sharp, clean, and tight. I had the extra little pieces of dowel rod that I cut off, so I decided to use those on the other sides of the squares just to make it a little more interesting. Because I was waiting for the lettering to dry in that corner, I painted the 2 sides that weren't in that corner, and then I went back and put painter's tape over the other 2 sides and painted those, just to save some time. I used the True Bond wood glue to glue all of these little pieces down, and I had to use some weights just to hold them down. I also had to use my utility knife to kind of carve them a little bit because they were a little curved on the back, and if I had glued them on that way, they would only glued down in a few areas. So I wanted to shave them down a little bit to make them sit flat. I wanted to add a little bit of magic to the blue in this toy chest. So I used some gold, and the color is vintage gold. Again, universal Rust-Oleum. I'm testing it out on the side there. And then I'm just going to randomly spray a little bit off. I'm not close. I'm doing it very slowly, just to add a few little sprinkles of magical dust. Now you notice that I taped off the wood areas, but what I forgot was to tape off the gold areas. And I thought maybe the gold wouldn't show, I guess, but it did. And I ended up having to use Fusion mineral paint in the color Buttermilk over the top because it would bleed through, of course, the transparent gold. One more lesson to learn from me. That's what I'm here for, to make the mistakes so you can avoid them. I did wipe off a lot of it, but as you know, spray paint dries pretty quickly. There was one little hole on the inside of the top that I filled with wood filler and then sanded it down. This little spot was an area that I had stained, obviously, the wood, and I hit the painted area with stain, which usually is not a big deal, except that the stain had dried and I had missed it. So I ended up trying to clean it off with mineral spirits, and it didn't work so well, so I had to paint over it. Now, I first painted over it with a brush, ended up going back with a roller because it just didn't look right. Now, if it's only been a day, it should come off, but much more than that, I guess it's not going to, or at least not with this color. We're putting on the hardware, which is really just the top. So I'm screwing in the screws. There are so many. And then there is this slow close on the inside. So I want to put that back on and tighten it up. And there we go. One last little touch, I decided to put a moon and a couple of stars on the inside, just for a little more fun. Well friends, that's all I have for you this week. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you like the results of the toy chest. My neighbor had asked me to create a Harry Potter night sky and use a dark blue and a gold and a silver, and I think that I accomplished all of those things. My goal was to create something that the whole family could enjoy and that their son could enjoy way past their toddler years. So I didn't want to make it babyish. I wanted it to be a little bit more fun. And yes, there are some things that he can touch now and some little secret things on the inside with the moon and the stars, and then the night sky on the top. Also have Hedwig, Harry Potter's owl. It says Thomas's Mischief Managed on the top. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to stick around for the after pictures. See you next time. Gotta put some toys in there.
You can do it.